The big news in the world today is that in addition to the politics and economics that are turbulent around us, actually there are many, many more forces at work in the world that are changing the shape of the world dramatically around us. And our danger right now, and I'm beginning to get nervous for many of my clients across very many different industries, they're saying things like, I can't wait for this crisis to be over. This economic crisis in most cases. I can't wait for this to be over, and then we can get back to normal. Then we can go back to doing things how we used to do them, to making money the way we know how to make money. If my message is anything this afternoon, it's that that will never happen. There is no normal to go back to. Even if I could wave a magic wand here this afternoon and fix the economy while we're sitting here, we will not go back to how things used to be. In fact, the danger is acting with yesterday's logic in a changing world tomorrow. We're kind of like these two guys sitting in this boat, going along our lives, our everyday lives, sort of working out what we should do. Some of you are so good at what you do, you can do it half asleep. But we're not necessarily lifting our eyes up beyond our current situation to see big, turbulent, unexpected, unpredicted, unprecedented forces coming our way. Every now and again there's a bump and noise, and economy changes, politics changes, and then you've got to wake your team up, you've got to get the motor of your business going, and then the change thunders at you. And yeah, in the current economic climate, let's not talk about bailouts. We live in a remarkable moment of history where we do have major historical forces coming our way. I'd like to suggest to you that actually we live at a moment in history that history itself will look back on, where all the forces of change, social, cultural, political, economic, organizational, even spiritual and personal forces are all combining at one moment in history to change our world. This happens every few centuries. The last time it happened in this way was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And consider what the world would be like before electricity, what the world was like before mechanization, before motors and engines, and therefore before cars and trucks and factories and trains and aeroplanes. That's not such a big thought. For many of you, that is your parents' world. Literally, there are people just 1 or 2 generations away from us who grew up, who were born in that world. And then it all changed, and here we are today. And I really do believe it's changing again. And what that means for you as a leader is that you have to change your mindset about what the future looks like. You have to change your mindset about what it is that you should be doing right now as a leader, you and your organization. In fact, I think the primary skill of leaders today is this: our ability to look beyond what seems to be the horizon to what's actually happening. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see remarkable things happen in the world. And I believe history will look back and say this was a moment when everything changed. This is what my team and I research and study every day. We spend a lot of time trying to understand what's causing this change and what these changes are going to cause in the world. We have suggested that there are 5 key forces that are disrupting the world dramatically right now. 5 forces that above all others are causing deep structural and significant change in the world. We've called these the tides of change. And just very briefly, those tides, an acronym for the 5 forces, are these. Technology, an obvious place to start. You've talked a lot about science and technology today already. Technologies are impacting our lives with these tiny little powerful devices, cheap and accessible to everybody all over the world. Just last month, it was estimated, I mean, it's impossible to say exactly when it happened, but in the last few weeks, there have been more mobile phones than people in Africa. Now, not all of those are smartphones, But Africa is not far behind with these devices. And of course, if you go into the developed world, everybody's got one. Most of you, if you had left your phone at home on your way to this conference, would have turned around and gone back for it. You would not be able to spend a day without your phone. Small, cheap, incredibly powerful devices in the palm of our hand, giving us access to amazing information. Now, this has impacted us in a variety of different ways. Probably my favorite photograph of this past year is actually these two put together. If you want to talk about the world changing, who thought we could have a retirement of a pope? But the last pope that came into the seat in Rome, in the Vatican City, there's everybody waiting for the announcement, ready to get their candles lit. Here is the announcement of the Pope earlier this year, and not one of those is a candle. Those are smartphones, iPads, iPods, tablets, notebooks, notepads. In just 8 years, the world has changed like that. I experienced this a little bit more personally. A few months ago, Amazon had a massive sale on a variety of 1980s movies. And my wife and I thought that it would be a good idea to introduce these movies to our 3 children. I have 3 daughters, 14, 11, and 8. And I thought we should give them names, but my wife said it's the digital age, numbers are fine. It's not true. It's not true. Don't believe everything I say. But anyway, we got 3 daughters, that's at least is true. And we wanted to introduce them to the culture of the 1980s. All of us think the culture of our teenage years was the best. And so off we went and bought a pile of these movies. I was very excited the first night we put one of these on. I think it was Home Alone to start with. And we got sort of 15 minutes into the movie, and I looked across to my daughters, expecting them to be as deeply engrossed and enraptured with these movies as I had been. Nothing. No reaction at all. We got through Home Alone. I thought, okay, let's try something else. I think the next one was Back to the Future. We put that in. I looked across after 15 minutes to see the reaction, the excitement on their faces. Nothing. Eventually, I couldn't take it any longer. I said to them, what's wrong? I mean, these are the greatest movies ever made. What's the problem? And my daughters looked at me and said, but they make no sense. Why doesn't anybody just phone? Almost every one of the plots of every one of the movies I loved as a kid, almost every plot of every Magnum P.I. episode, and possibly MacGyver and all the others, the A-Team as well, could be solved with the introduction of a single cell phone. Nobody has to roar up and down Honolulu in a Ferrari anymore. You just phone. My daughters don't get these movies. History is ruined. Technology is changing our lives and changing them fast. The I in the tides of change stands for institutional change. This has got to do with the change to the structures of how our world is put together. Maybe to put it differently, it's the rules for success and failure that govern your industry. What's a good lead time? What's the right margin? What's the best distribution channel? Who are your competitors? What should your strategy be? All of these questions used to have very clear, obvious, and agreed upon answers. All of you knew the answers to those questions and you stuck to the rules. Some of you still do, and that's why you're struggling. Because the rules are being rewritten in every industry. The orthodoxies, these are not just the rules that are imposed from outside. These are your internal rules, the things you think are rules that you have to obey until somebody comes along, some competitor who's never been in your business before, and does it completely differently and successfully too. You haven't seen that so much in your industry, but I'm sure it's coming and I'm sure the potential is there. Other industries are obvious to see, entertainment and banking and the motor industry, pharmaceuticals and others. These are all places where the rules have been broken over the last few years by new competitors, and the world has changed completely. Potential is there for you as well. The D in the tides of change stands for demographics. This is something you're very aware of In fact, the theme of the conference, 9 billion people, how are we going to feed them in 2050? You understand that you must look at demographics. So nothing more to be said on that. And in fact, the E, you understand as well, the environment. You've heard about this right from the first speaker this morning, from Jorgen, and then also from Michael Porter in his understanding of creating shared value. This is something you are integrally involved in, environmental and ethical issues. And then finally, the S is for social values. If everything else is changing as it is, then people's expectations of what is right and good, and what is normal and what is weird and what is bad and what is wrong, these things are all changing too. And we're seeing that in everything from how people think about what a marriage is and who's allowed to get married and who isn't, all the way through to our definitions of success in the workplace, to virtual working and flexible office hours, to everything. What we believe, what our expectations are from the world, from life, from our work, these things are all changing. So the tides of change, these 5 forces along with politics and economics, these are all shaping the world as we know it and shaping them in dramatic ways. We live in a world of remarkable change. How will you respond? Technology is a key driver of change to transform the world as we know it. As a leader in the agribusiness industry, you need to really understand how transforming technology will be. All the other things we've discussed today and will continue to discuss tomorrow all just add to the momentum of historical change. The world will not look the same as it does today by 2020. And you and your business need to respond with bold new initiatives. You as a leader need to respond with bold leadership. And probably most importantly, you have to make sure you've got the right people with you, because it is the people in your business that will ensure your future success, and especially those digital natives who will ensure that you can sustain that success well into the century. That is how agribusiness will rise to the challenge that the world has placed before it, a challenge of a changing world that you are desperately needed for and in desperate need of responding. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. For more information, follow the Twitter feed or contact me in any of these ways. If you are one of the digital dinosaurs and you would prefer my postal address, I'll be around at the social function and you can come and get it from me later. But thank you very much for your time. Anil, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.